All right, everyone. Looks like we had a little technical difficulty, but that's okay. That's life. But I am grateful for our amazing production team. They worked it out, even though there's a little bit of a glitch. But we are back on, and so we're just gonna get back to the discussion. Get back in the discussion. So I guess to reorient everyone, we have been talking about the attack on Jussie Smollett, and we were just sort of just unpacking, like, well, what does this mean for Black gay men, and how should we be sort of thinking about it? And I think, David, you were talking about stuff. You were saying something real deep. I can't pull it up completely, but it was real deep, and I was really into it. Maybe it was Damien.
Damien said something like right up. Do you remember what
you were saying? That Damien said something that you like. Damien said something that you would like.
Right. I was preparing to say before we got disconnected. One of the things that surprised me about the response to this was that, and also in response to what you were saying about your own experience and how the memory, when you're traumatized in that way, can be spotty. I was surprised by, in this instance with Jussie, as far as the reporting that was made according to him and his experience, I felt was detailed. Mm-hmm. He knew where he was, he knew what he saw, he knew what he heard while he was being attacked. What surprised me was that the response from a number of people on social media was the need to verify his statement in order to believe him. And I get that's the nature of, social media right now.
Not on my social media.
Really?
It wasn't an explicit verify this. It was more
I had people telling me about what was happening on social media. So I got a lot of people saying, Charles, all my social media people are saying, basically poking holes in what he's saying.
It's more like there's something suspect here.
There's something suspect here, yeah.
Besides what,
which made me really sad.
Reported.
Like, it made me really,
that
really
was
sad.
The more of the surprise. And so to me, I interpreted that to mean, okay, you need it to be verified in order for you to believe it, because otherwise you're still suspicious of what he's reporting that experience to have been.
Still suspicious.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I was, like I said, I was reassured by the groundswell that people have. I didn't have anyone talk to me about how they didn't believe him or they were a little bit skeptical about it until I met somebody in person. And then this morning I started to see on social media posts about, hey, do we know all the facts here? What exactly happened? Is this really true? And then it just started to turn, and it was almost like everyone had to take two separate different camps. Like, either you believed him unconditionally or you didn't. And what I found disturbing was also that a lot of people were upset about questioning it or saying, like, hey, this story seems a little bit spotty, like it doesn't all connect. And then they were like, well, that doesn't mean he deserved to be beat up. And I was like, well, that doesn't, I don't think anyone was saying that. I think people were trying to figure out. And so it's interesting, like, I think you used the great word, like, verification. It was almost like people heard him, but they wanted him to verify. But we see the same thing with transgender women. We see the same thing with Black people just in general. We see the same thing with women a lot too. Like, they have to be verified, or it has to be proven true before somebody actually acknowledges that this happened, or hey, we need to figure out the facts. Whereas some guy can just say, oh, this happened to me, and then all of a sudden everyone believes it and just goes from there. But I think it's more reflective of kind of how this society looks at us as Black gay men. We were talking about how people took different camps. The straight Black people were like, oh, this is racism. There was the noose, and there was this, that, and the other. And then gay whites were like, oh, this is a homophobic attack. And, he experiences this homophobic attack. And I was like, well, didn't they say nigger faggot? So wasn't there a race part in there? Or was it just, you just heard faggot and you didn't hear the race stuff? Because in the gay community, we're all kumbaya and, just
David, you're so
race.
homophobic. I can't even deal with it.
I really am. It's my toxic masculinity showing again.
So for the Black gay boy that's witnessing what happened to Jussie, that sees it in the media, the Black gay boy that's 13, 14, 15 years old, and paying very close attention to what's happening, what do we think he should take away from this? Like, what, as a community, what should we be saying?
I mean, I hope he's seeing the support. Like you mentioned, a number of other celebrities, and there's been a huge outcry of support, like immediately.
But what about from other Black gay men? Because I think a lot of us have gotten love and validation and support outside of our community.
Yeah.
I think that's why many of us feel like we have to flee our community, because we think that sometimes grace and compassion and support can only exist outside of Black gay men. And if there's ever been an Atlanta narrative, that's often it, right?
Yeah.
So my question becomes, where's the grace? Where's the compassion? Where's the support within the community? Like, what is the message around that?
Well, I've seen a lot of it on social media. I do think when it gets into social media, I think we were getting into this before we got cut off. Social media is like this unfiltered news source, and a lot of us get our news sources from social media, and so we don't always know the truth, and it's almost like this, a jury of public opinion, and that's based on our implicit bias, what we've gone through. So like anyone that's gone through a traumatic event, anyone that's been violent or had experienced some traumatic violence will immediately side with him. Other people that don't necessarily believe that will take a different side, which is very interesting. But then I used to always wonder, like, why isn't CNN or MSNBC? And that's because the reputable news stations have to actually figure out if these are facts, because you don't see a lot of stuff.
They vet the information.
Yeah, they vet the information first. I think we got a couple questions or comments.
Yeah, Kasim made a point that the truth finding necessary to support his experience is as old as the lynchings Ida studied in Memphis.
Amen to that. Thank you for that. And I think so many of us have had experiences where people didn't believe us when we've tried to tell our story or share something. You think about Black boys that might report being sexually violated, and people. So I feel like so often we're not believed when we want to report horrible things happening. Even on our jobs, if we report, someone being hostile toward us, because there's just that thing about like who gets to be credible and who doesn't. I think it's just such a real moment we find ourselves in.
And I think the difficult part of it too is that. And I've been in different work situations where people have tried to throw me under the bus, and all this stuff kind of happens. And it is validating when someone who is, a head administrator or running things actually says, I know you did the right thing. I believe you. Like, you leave. I had a situation like that happen with me with a clash with a different administrator who was lying on me, doing all this other stuff. You know the details of all this. But when the president sits in front of me and says, I know you're 100% right and you did the right thing. We looked at the emails, we looked at this, you did the right thing. Like, I got into my car and I cried. I was like, oh my God. So, that's a simple thing, like with work and stuff. So if you're traumatized, you ask the question, like, what do we say to, young Black boys out there who are
bearing witness to this, who's seeing this, who's paying very close attention.
Yeah, who's paying close attention to it, then, watch it very closely, but don't be afraid. And especially if you read the social media and a lot of the people that are naysayers are saying that Jussie may be lying or this, that, and the other, don't let that deter you from telling your story. And Jussie's story is on a big national and international scale, but those of us that are kind of doing this stuff, it could be just, within your family, someone is abusing you, something happens, and there's going to be a problem. But don't be afraid to bring it up just because you think nobody's going to believe you. Make sure you use your voice and vocalize yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, David. Yeah. How about you, Damien? Do you have any thoughts about what the message can be for?
Yeah, the same thing, similarly. I think when you were initially talking about your incidents, like I had never had a physical violent experience, but I kept thinking like, surely something, and then there was an incident in maybe the early 2000s in Atlanta at the intersection of Marietta and Peachtree, where I was crossing the street and a car was making a right, and I was waiting on that car to make the right, and the passenger made eye contact with me and with a look of disgust called me a faggot. And I was minding my business, just trying to cross the street, and similar to what you just said, I thought my immediate reaction was, what did I do to get clocked? Which now is so like, really? Is that what I did?
That was your big concern.
Was that my concern? Like,
what was the tale?
What was the tale?
I know, right.
Like, and even that
Because you go into like
is embarrassing to admit.
Self-disciplining mode,
Right, and that's embarrassing to admit. And mind you, I was still old enough. In that, I'm embarrassed that was my first
it's a journey.
thought.
Yeah.
And so my hope for younger black gay men is that, you know, despite these things, you still live your truth. You still exist in this world. You still be you. And, you know, it's a different day and age than it was in the early 2000s or late 90s.
Right.
And I think a lot of the young guys are living in a different type of existence than when I grew up.
But
and
I still find that there are black gay boys and men that still experience homophobic violence. They're
Sure.
Still, like I remember
Sure.
I was talking to someone maybe like last year, 2 years ago, a student in the Atlanta public school, and they were saying that they're still they still experience homophobic violence. So I was like, I thought that this generation was not that it didn't exist, but like the very overt and, you know, it was something else. Do we have any more questions or comments?
Or did we check out?
Oh no,
No, we're good.
We're good. So feel free to, you know, again react and just share your questions or comments.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking as we were talking earlier, like, you know, it gets to a point where, you know, there's so many assaults on us. And I almost think this is kind of what capitalism and the NRA wants.
Wow.
Like, for us to, like, get into this war mentality where we're all, like, strapping. And I have a lot of friends who are like, I own a gun. And
Black gays with guns. The black gays have guns and now they're strapping up.
Why does that sound like a movie title? Black gays with guns. You got a question? Yeah.
Ken P was just making a point here.
Hey, Ken P.
Ken P reported that, or he was saying that, of course, the New York Daily News reported that surveillance video was found. So there's that. But there is something to be said about how traditional sources have to legitimate our stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they do that all the time. And I think, you know, people are saying now, and they're being very vague with it, like they found 2 persons of interest.
Yeah.
So they're being very careful with the wording. They're not saying they witnessed the assault on the video or they saw the assault happen. What they're saying is they found 2 people. Now, what that means, we don't know. But of course, on social media before we came on, there were people that were like, all those of you that were questioning Jussie, like, here, they found 2 people. What do you know, how you like me now? And then other people were like, well, we have to wait for all the facts to come. So again, it's kind of like where you lie along this continuum.
I'm not honest, I'm not.
It's really interesting to see like the social
dynamics
dynamics of it. It's really interesting.
I'm so about, I've shared this before. My social media is so curated. Like I only see cat videos and I cannot with the crazy. Like my social media, so because it's like I love my people, but it's like sometimes it's just too much. And a lot of people project. You see so much of the best of us, but you also see so much of the pain that comes across, and it's really unfortunate. And again, I'm not saying that. I mean, I believe in questioning everything. There are those that would consider me to even be a skeptic, as you might find this hard to believe. But I mean, ultimately, my position all along has been, we know that he has been harmed, and I just want him to be okay. And there are investigations, there are people that they're doing all that, and information will come out. But right now, one of our own has been harmed, and for me, that's like the only thing I'm focused on. The who, what, where, why, how. That's not what I'm focused on.
It's above our pay grades. And
it's not to say that obviously it's a racist, homophobic attack. I'm not saying that should not be something that we're also grappling with. But to me, the first issue is: are you okay? Are you good? Do we need to be sending positive energy? Because I mean, ultimately, one of our own has been harmed.
I mean, but what do you think about the idea of like, all of us need to kind of invest in guns and be strapped or be ready to protect ourselves or defend ourselves? Because it's literally
who are these people that are buying guns at your friends? David, who are these people?
Black gay men buying guns.
And what are the conversations that y'all?
The conversations are just like, I'm scared because this country is fucked up. And there's a lot of shit that's going on, and people can be racist, homophobic, and both. And I don't know when somebody's going to try to attack me, and I want to defend myself.
Did they go to the gun range too and stuff?
They go to the gun range and they practice shooting and they do all that stuff. Yeah, Johnny.
This is actually really related to this point. So Kasim has 2 points that were just made. So what should we do to protect ourselves, even though in America, as a black queer femme man who knows my safety is relative in the U.S.? I thought about conceal and carry today.
Wow.
I checked in with loved ones and asked what safety measures they were taking.
Hey, Kasim.
Thank you, Kasim.
Thanks, Kasim.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, what do you guys think? Like, I'm on the fence about it. Like, I have to admit, like,
I'm for gun control. Like, I don't believe in I don't. Yeah. I think that it is. I mean, I want people to feel safe, so I get it.
Right.
I'm not sure if if all the black gays started carrying that it wouldn't protect us from structural violence, certainly.
Right.
So I think that I think it's more like creating spaces in our community where we are able to comfort each other.
Right.
I think doing a better job of facilitating care networks for ourselves. Like, so many of us feel so isolated, right? Even in places like Atlanta and DC and New York, where there are a lot of our community members, many of us still feel isolated. So I think having care networks and having spaces where people can feel supported. Like, even in Atlanta, like, I don't, like, forever there used to be discussion groups, right? There'll be weekly groups where you can go and hang out and stuff like that. That doesn't even exist anymore, right? So I just think that we need spaces to be able to support each other. I think we need to just reach out to one another. Like, I think that as a core community value, I think community care should be primary.
And we can still have a gun, though, right? No, I'm just kidding.
To each his own. To each her or his own.
Because, I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. You can have a care network and still be packing. Go ahead.
This is actually specific to Charles. This is from Kim P. He says, but Charles, you mentioned that these sort of attacks feel overt. And I think that has something to do with why folks were not ready to believe Jussie. It even felt unreal to me, but maybe this is where we are, and that is scary as fuck, and maybe we ought to get the strap.
The gays are really strapping up. Talk to David about the.
Well, no. Let me be clear. I'm not an NRA member. I don't own a gun myself. I've never done any of this stuff. I do think, because I get caught up in the capitalism part of it. It's almost like they want us to become this Lord of the Rings kind of cannibalistic, like everything's just going to be anarchy and we're just going to be shooting each other and there's going to be a race war like right around the corner. And I don't agree with that. I know when I grew up, my dad had a gun in the house, and I remember a couple times somebody came to the front porch and was trying to like break in, and my dad went and got the shotgun and literally came to the front.
But did he cock it first?
He cocked it, and the guy ran. I'll also say that I had a situation one time in Philadelphia where I had a stalker that was coming to my place and doing a lot of stuff, and I was going through trauma, like having panic attacks when he would show up, because it was someone I had met on Craigslist and I had messed around with before, and then it went sour, and he started like showing up at my work. He started calling, like he called 39 times in one day, threatening all this violence and all this other stuff towards me. And I remember I bought some mace and I bought a bat to keep in my thing, because I'd never had a panic attack before, but when there was a call box downstairs, and when it rang, and I looked out the window and I saw him, my heart started beating out my chest. And I remember thinking to myself, and I called the police, and I was like, he's here, he's at the front door. And I started freaking out. And I knew that I'd never experienced a panic attack before, but I knew that's what it was. And it was kind of the trauma of dealing with him. And it took me a while to get over that. Like, I kept the bat by my door for a long period of time. I carried the mace in my bag with me for a long period of time. I never got to the point where I felt like I needed to buy a gun, but I felt for a little way, and it took about a year and a half until I calmed down from that, and then I didn't worry about it anymore. But like, that's one event, but like people that go through traumatic events, and I don't know what Jussie's going through right now, but I'm sure it's got to be very traumatic, and hopefully he's not reading social media, he's not reading Twitter, he's not reading any of that bullshit where people are like coming for him and doing all this other stuff. He'll get the support, but then he's going to have these clowns he's going to have to deal with. But it is hard, but I think there is a way we have to be prepared to defend ourselves. You have to be vigilant. You have to keep your eyes open all the time, which is an unfortunate state of affairs in this day and age, but we have to look out for this shit, because people are always around the corner ready to do some dumb shit.
And let me also say, Ken P. First, I reacted to your comment before I had thought about it, and part of it is that I always want to have something to say, right? But the truth is, I don't know. I don't know how to protect black gay men. I don't. But what I am really interested in at this moment And from here on out, is I'm interested in thinking through how we can protect our communities together.
Right.
I, at this moment, don't have a good response, but I believe that if enough of us put our heads together, if we just start thinking through it, like when one of our own is physically attacked, what do we do? What is the response? How do we create communities where we're able to protect each other? Like really think through some of those hard questions. I mean, I know I've been on panels and I know we've had, they're like op-eds and think pieces and all this kind of stuff, but just on a very tangible, concrete level, like what does it mean to protect our own? I'm very interested in having these conversations.
Now, people have there have been black gay, almost like mafias or gangs, where if someone gets roughed up or bullied, someone would kick the shit out of that same person. And I've heard these stories happen before. So,
but are those making people feel safe?
I don't know.
You know what I started thinking about? I started thinking about Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison, the 7 days.
Remember 7 days.
7 days. We're gonna talk about the 7 days though.
Okay.
Johnny,
I think had a question.
You made a couple comments that relate to actually what everyone is talking about. So first and foremost, Kasim just said, but wait a second, it doesn't have to be an either or.
Right.
At least David just may be hinting at this. Care network with self-defense can go together. No one is saying go NRA, but pepper spray, taser, something.
That's what I was
going
to say. Like that? That's what I was saying. Something in the middle before you go full on gun.
I would probably pepper spray myself. So I'm like, I don't think I need to be fooling with nobody. It's like I would probably get it wrong to be the wrong. I would probably have the wrong angle, but maybe I need a class on that.
And Kim P.
I wouldn't trust myself with that.
Kim P. mentioned, I'm halfway joking, sort of, and guns can seem like a good solution. Maybe they are, but you also said, Charles, earlier about how this is a community thing. I read that as structural and systemic.
I don't, if guns help blacks, if they protect, I don't know. I'm not saying
I'm not
more.
comfortable.
I'm interested in getting together, talking about what do we do, like what. And I know there've been different, remember what was it, Rashawn Brazil? Like I feel like there've often been horrible things happen, and then we have panels and community forums, but I'm not certain if very tangible things come out. And maybe there were, maybe there were, and I just didn't know. But I feel like there are these reoccurring things of things happening, and it's like every time it happens, it's like as if it's the first time. So, and I'm like, well, how do we build on? Like, what historically can we learn from how our communities reacted to violence, and what are some of the best practices? What are some of the... But ultimately, I'm really interested in figuring out ways to help inspire a greater sense of safety. Even if, and I realize that in some sense, safety is an illusion. Like, is a black gay man ever safe in a society? I don't know. But, well, actually, I do know. But at least to... So if not safety, what is it then? Maybe a sense of, that you got a community supporting you, or that they got your back or something. Like, David, can I call you if I'm feeling like, can you bring the mace over? Because I'm feeling like
someone's about
just
to...
you shared your experience with the stalker. Did you tell anyone?
Yeah, I told friends and I told community members. Obviously, I was in touch with the police and they were helping me out. But it was very traumatic at the time because he was doing threats on physical. Wanting to spread salacious lies about me on on social media and YouTube and stuff like that, and so it was a little bit tough to swallow at the time.
Yeah, I've had a similar incident with an ex where I've had to get an order of protection.
I did
as
too.
well.
So you went to court and you went to the whole...
Get a temporary restraining order.
And funny that you say you went to court. I don't know if you remember when Punt City Market, what's Punt City Market now, had the police and the courts
City Hall East.
in the basement of City Hall East.
And the Lee Haney gym was over. Yeah.
I remember I had to, in order to get that order of protection, I had to, you present in front of the judge, and having to stand in front of a courtroom full of people with myriad other cases and say that I'm requesting an order of protection from another man, and me being a 20-something man talking about another man, and having even the judge, I feel, look at me like,
right,
why don't y'all just fight that out? Why don't y'all just work that out? Y'all two men, why are you wasting the court's time here for this dispute? When I was more adamant that it was a domestic dispute wherein I needed protection. And I just remember that feeling too, and that goes back into toxic masculinity
it does,
and all
it
of those
does.
other things.
It does.
But I never felt the need for a gun either. And I just feel like armed, even concealed weaponry on black men in America is just asking for more trouble than protection. So that would just be tough for me.
And what I appreciate about what you shared is how often there are these institutions that exist to protect us, to provide safety, and then you go into these institutions like a courtroom,
Yeah.
and you are seeking help,
Yeah.
and you're belittled. It's like they start playing on your whole
Yeah.
thing. And so it makes me wonder: are there folks that wouldn't even go through that? It was interesting. I had
I'm
to think
sure.
too.
I'm sure because I didn't even want to do it.
Absolutely.
But I felt it was the right thing to do. And I knew if something were to happen to me, like that would be a trail of evidence to protect me.
Exactly. Yeah. But y'all asking us, what do y'all think in the comments? What are some of the things that you found that helps your sense of safety? How are some ways that you, within your friendship circles or communities, what are there things that y'all have implemented? Or are there ideas that you have about ways that we as, black gay men, how we can have a greater sense of safety? Johnny, what's up?
Yeah. So
Johnny
to
has a
that
question.
point, Kim P. Mentioned that violence, and I think this is a question to everybody too, but his statement is violence is a condition of living in your truth on the margins, and that needs to be dealt with.
You know what was interesting, and thank you for that comment. I read something someone had and this is where I hate social media. Someone had reposted a tweet after the story broke about Jussie's assault, and was kind of blaming him and saying if he was a real man, he would have fought back, or he would have done this if he had just had this. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, what is wrong with people that they think that someone who can be jumped like that should have? It's a sign of manhood if you actually defended yourself. And who says he didn't fight back? And who says he didn't fight for a while and kind of run the guys off, whoever assaulted him? So it's just kind of strange how we have this mentality about things. And
these are people also posting it on social media. So, my suspicion is that I wonder how many of us carry these messages that will say something like that, but is that something that they practice in their lives? If you're attacked by whatever, you know what I'm saying? It's amazing what the people that we become on social media aren't always the people that are always how we show up in our actual lives, and we give people advice. It's almost like we're we have these avatars on social media where we they're not who we are. It's like we inscribe all these things onto these personas that we have on social media. So in my life I don't feel powerful, in my life I don't feel strong, but on social media, my superpower is dragging the girls or whatever. It's like you become this you become this completely different. And I'm like, that's why one of the things that I know the people in my life, my friends, get annoyed when I call them. Because I don't do stuff on social. If we're having an exchange, I pick up the phone. Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's going on?
Because I know that we're on social media or we're behind a monitor.
It's a performance.
And you also get the superpower. You start saying shit you wouldn't say necessarily.
Shape of the caddy.
Right.
Right.
And we have a question that came in from Kasim: Is Jussie's incident bringing us cisgender men experiences to the violence experienced by our trans sisters of color?
Is it?
Could you say a little bit more about that? I think I kind of get what you're saying, but could you say a little bit more about what? And if you also yourself, it sounds like you probably also might have a perspective on that. So if you want to just kind of share what your perspective is, we'd also really appreciate just hearing you kind of weigh in on that. We just want to make sure that we're responding to it in the spirit in which you offer. But thank you for that. I really, really appreciate that question.
Yeah, and I just heard some other story today about a black trans woman being murdered, stabbed or shot. Just another sister kind of struck down. It's just it's really crazy. And I think social media. I think all these things happen before. It's not that there's an epidemic of it, but we just hear about the news more often than we used to, because everyone's kind of watching, everyone's vigilant, everyone posts on social media.
But I think the other end is that we also get distracted. So a horrible thing happens, and we're all up in arms, and we're enraged, and then a week later, it's we're on to something else. And I think there's something, it's kind of scary to me about that.
Short attention span.
Short attention span, yeah.
And because thank you for this follow-up, Kasim. And the statement is, I've noticed how impactful this has been on cis gay men of color, and yet what can we do to illuminate the experiences of trans women of color?
I absolutely think that we need to be good allies. We need to stand in solidarity. We need to support organizations. We need to support translator organizations that are out there on the front lines fighting the good fight. We need those of us that have platforms as it relates to funding. We need to make sure that black translator organizations are being funded. We need to make sure that we are standing in solidarity. We need to make sure that we are listening and learning and just being because I think sometimes the way privilege shows up is when you try to like center yourself in the experience of trans women, and that's not our role. Our role is to be supportive. Our role is to like being a good ally isn't to make it about you, right? And just
Right.
really and truly using our platform to. But I mean, you know, my position all along has been that I think there's an important need for coalition building in our community, and that we need to be absolutely in solidarity every step of the way, because this violence is happening to, you know, black, queer, and trans folks is it's really, it's not just dehumanizing, it's normalizing our suffering, as has always been the experience of black people in this country, really.
And I'm not sure if Jussie was not a celebrity, and none of the privilege issues that you brought up at the beginning of this, I think this would be another invisible attack, possibly as well,
Right.
were it not for, you know, his celebrity. So,
But it's also
we're all
inspired
in
the
this
other end too.
together.
It's like people are basically calling him a liar.
Right.
So I don't know if his being a celebrity has necessarily inspired more compassion. I mean,
It's a double-edged
it's
sword.
a double-edged sword, because I think that I've heard a lot of attacks on his credibility. I've heard a lot of attacks on, you know, what was he doing out there? Just all these questions. Like, it's 2:00 in Chicago. You know.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be invisible if he was not. It would be more possible to be invisible were he not
Who he
famous.
is.
Well, I mean, there have been lots of horrible things happening to black gay men. It goes.
And we fight to get those stories told.
Mm-hmm. And we have to. This one got exposure and splash, and I think the fact that the FBI was involved and things started moving
Yeah.
so quickly and evolving, and there was a lot of community pressure on it. There was a lot of celebrity pressure on it. There was a lot of political pressure with all the politicians that were kind of chiming in. So I think that part of it really helped facilitate the validation or the verification of what his story was. Whereas in other situations, like you do look at the Ed Buck situation, like it's just silence. It's just silence. All you have is this old ass Democratic donor, white guy, who preys on black men for a living. And he's just saying, oh, they just happened to be in my apartment and 2 of them died within the span of a year and a half. And we're supposed to believe that and just move on. And because they're two, one of them was a porn star, the other one was a prostitute. So therefore they don't get the play. They don't get Kamala Harris being able to say, hey, this is really awful what happened to you and we need to fight this. You don't get Nancy Pelosi chiming in. You don't get Terry Crews or Steve Harvey. These brothers just die and nobody gives a fuck. And so Jussie is very blessed with the privilege that he has. It's horrible what happened to him. And I know we're going to get to a point where we have to wrap up. But I do want to say that 2 things. One, Jussie, I don't know if you probably don't watch this show, but if you do, I hope you're healing and I hope you're doing well. And I hope you get all the support you need to kind of get through this and move forward. And if you need counseling or help or something to help you go through it, know that you have a whole community kind of behind you, helping you out with this. And then to all the black gay men who are out there, I think this is kind of like a call. And when I'm looking at this whole 2 a.m. story piece, right? Like, what the fuck was he doing out by himself at 2 a.m. in Chicago? What that says to me is that we do have to create more of these networks. So whether it just be one friend or 2 friends, like how many times do we go out to the club and you meet somebody and you don't tell your friends like, hey, I'm going to be here and, you know, watch out for me, or I met this guy, if I don't check in with you in a little bit, let us know. So I think we can create these little networks. It doesn't have to be a big conglomerate network, but just between friends, like check in on each other. If you separate, say, you know, check in on me before you leave. If you're going to leave, let me know what's going on. And so that way we can kind of be accountable for each other. In case something like this does happen, we can get on it a little bit quicker, because we may not be able to prevent it from happening like you guys are saying. but at least we can kind of be there for each other and support each other and act if something does go down.
Yeah.
To that point, and to the question that Charles asked earlier, Ken P made that very same point. Specifically, Ken said, if I'm tipping out of my apartment at night,
Oh, tip.
You better
I
tip.
tend to
Right,
let
you better
folks
tip.
know
You better tip.
where I am going, or just FaceTime. That could be a paltry response. It could also signal the usefulness of community or network responses to violence.
Yeah, and you can also, I just thought about this as you were saying that, you can screenshot. So like supposing you're on Grindr or Tinder or Jack'd or whatever, and you see somebody that you're going to hook up with. And, there's sometimes where, like, we can be so horny that even though, like, our spidey senses are going off and saying, like, this seems a little bit weird, we still go with it because we just want to go out and get the nut. Screenshot the name of the person, the picture, whatever it is. Send it to a friend. I'm going for this hookup. If you don't hear from me, reach out. But I just want to let you know where I'm going. Those are simple things we can do with technology and smartphones today that can really help kind of, like, create this network and at least provide some support in case something does go down.
Do people do that?
I know some people who do, yeah. Like screenshot things and say, hey, this is...
I know people say they do that. I wonder, and what am I getting at? Yes, I've done that sometimes, in a different life. But there have also been times that I didn't do that.
No. In a different life, Monday night?
No, what I'm getting at is that shame is such a intense feeling, and I think it may be hard for us at times to share, even with people that we care about very deeply and trust very deeply, some of the stuff that we're up to.
What we're doing, right?
Especially when we're doing things that may conflict with the public persona that we might have cultivated. And so I guess I'm just also, and I absolutely think people should do what you shared. I think that's amazing advice, David. Thank you for sharing that. But I'm also wondering, like, are there things we can do when we are less willing to share with our friends?
Disclose.
Some of what we're up to.
And I know that we're getting close to wrapping up, but they're having a good time in this chat. But here's what they're saying.
So Johnny says y'all are having a good time in the chat.
Right. Without us, we can't read.
Just make sure you're liking this video and subscribe to YouTube while you're having fun in the chat. And sign up for our email list at thecounternative.org. Thank you. Yes.
So JDG was just saying, hey, I always do that, the screenshot, #screenshot. But Kasim said, hey, send your Google map directions. Ken and I screenshot things for safety. And then Ken came back and was like, y'all so nasty when he's tipping out to get a Reese's cup from the corner store.
Is that
Is that what y'all are calling it now?
Tipping out to get a Reese's cup. That's
Tipping
interesting.
out, yes.
You put your chocolate in my peanut butter.
Right.
You got your peanut butter on my chocolate.
They're gonna be faint. Stop it.
Two great tastes that go great together. Anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, y'all, for real, we definitely need to. And this so reminds me, because I feel like I've had this. It's almost like deja vu, because I've had. I've been doing this work for like 20 years almost, right? So I've had this conversation so many times about homophobic violence happens. What are we gonna do? What do we, and it's just like at a certain point we really need to start. I don't know if we need to start writing it down. And I think people are also doing great stuff, but just like, especially for the people that are coming up after us, like the Black gay, and not just you. I mean, like they're also men of a certain age that might be coming out into community too. So like if you're tipping out of a seniors community,
Absolutely.
like what does that mean? So just having David,
That's
that
the
is,
tip. That's your tip. That's a
With
walker.
a walker.
That's a
Counter-Narrative-
walker, y'all.
the
Still
Counter-Narrative-
tip.
And then they're doing it. The Counter-Narrative Project is not an ageist organization. We affirm the sexuality at whatever part in the lifespan that you're in. So we want to be affirming and sex positive around our
You
brothers.
can have
So
a
certainly-
stroller or a walker and still be sex positive.
But you were
and still
like
get your
mimicking
freak on.
it in a way that didn't seem very loving. That's how you be doing it.
It is loving.
This has been a really great show, y'all. Again, please feel free to comment in the comment box. Please like us and subscribe. And just really keep the conversation going. I mean, we'll keep monitoring the situation. And I guess as news happens, we'll probably just share it on our social media. But yeah, let's definitely keep the conversation going. Are there any final parting words that y'all have that you want to share with our audience before we say goodbye?
Be safe. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I said mine about the screenshotting and best wishes for Jussie Smollett. I hope he's okay.
And you want to do the walker again, just for our viewer? The walker. That's the no. That's
senior
not
tip.
okay. That is the senior tip. Thank y'all so much. And we will be back next Wednesday. And our topic next Wednesday at 7 o'clock will be is monogamy for me? So we're going to be discussing and unpacking all things related to that.
Expert on that too?
So, and maybe we'll get to go in depth a little bit more about tipping. Thank y'all so much, and we'll see you next week.